Hello dear viewer, today's build has a very particular pop culture inspiration of the Jedi Knights, and I mean the proper ones from the dark times of the 70s and the 80s, when they mainly dealt in telepathy and telekinesis instead of being living freaking gods of the galaxy.
They fly now! They fly now!
Remember when movies were good? Those were the days. Anyway, because of the inspiration, we will get a spell sword using mind-affecting illusion spells, specifically the calm spells and telekinesis, paired with the relevant Vokrii perks. This will allow to deal substantial damage with objects thrown with telekinesis and later in the game throwing the enemies themselves around. We will also use the Vokrii powered bound sword instead of a lightsaber. The resulting playstyle offers a choice between combat and combat avoidance. It may not have the highest damage output ever, but it makes up for it in the variety of combat options. Let's do a little bit of backstory first and then the gameplay bits. Your peaceful and simple childhood was interrupted by a tragedy. Your aunt and your uncle, who raised you, were killed in a vile bandit raid. Since you never knew your parents, you are now alone in Tamriel. You ran off into the woods, where you tried to survive on your own for a while, but the winter was coming and you were no survivalist. One day you passed out, hungry and cold, near an alien ruin. You were indeed so desperate for shelter that you were just about to risk braving the ghosts and curses of this place, just to warm yourself. And as your consciousness faded, you felt a deeper, unnatural cold surrounding you, and a piercing gaze in the dark. But then you woke up near a well-made campfire and a tall, robed figure standing by. You were rescued by a traveling spellsword, or so you thought as you started talking. He did tell you he was well versed in both magic and swordplay, but it wasn't until much later, when you traveled together to the Imperial City, that he revealed himself as the last remaining master of an ancient alien school of magic, combining mysticism, alteration, conjuration, and mind-affecting illusions. The man was old and in need of someone to pass on his knowledge before it's too late. You had nothing to lose, so you started the training. It would normally take years, maybe decades, the master told you, but you have to learn faster. You will learn in the fire of combat. The darkness now rises in Skyrim that you will have to confront.
I'll mount your...
Jolly good, dear viewers. Let's start off with the race of the build, which is most certainly a Breton, or, well, not so certainly, an Imperial could work as well. A Breton would be best for high absorb magicka ability, which will go well with the alteration perks. However, an Imperial can grant you an early game mind-controlling power, which also goes well with the playstyle. Needless to say then, we should probably go with the Atronach Standing Stone, reaching max magicka absorption once a day very early on. This will solve several problems of the build, one of them being a broad set of skills making it difficult to reach high-level anti-magic perks early. The other being the attribute spread, which may be difficult to do in a way that could satisfy your magicka needs. Speaking of which, the attributes for this bad boy look like this. As we spread across all attributes, be careful on what you choose with each level up. Prioritize health early, but stop investing in stamina after you have about 150 points, as you will require very little stamina for power attacks with your conjured weightless weapon. Quite a few cool Vokrii perks are in use with the build, and the skill selection is rather broad. First, you need to be a decent sword fighter, so in one-handed take all the sword-specific perks and get Victory Rush ASAP, because this perk is another good solution for your low stamina problems, giving you 100 points back with each kill. The lack of smithing skill will force us to take all the ranks of one-handed mastery. Also take the entire right-hand branch to have a chance of disarming and knocking down your enemies. It might be a good idea to take a few perks in block early on, as your armor rating will be rather pathetic. You will have to switch from sword and spell combat style to sword with empty offhand, which may be a little bit annoying, still doable though. Later on you will rely more and more on baleful telekinesis, so invest in block only if you plan a longer playthrough, and therefore don't mind using 3 perk points on something that will lose its usefulness over time. Of course, in a longer playthrough you will be able to reset the skill and get the points back, which I would recommend doing. Plenty of points will be sunk into the alteration skill. We need to become the masters of telekinesis. That's the hallmark of the build, you know, killing Draugr with stale bread and goblets and so on. So here are all the alteration perks. This is my first character that actually needs alteration dual casting, because later in the game telekinesis prodigy perk requires it to function. If you never used it, it's a relatively well-balanced way to use the telekinesis spell to throw your enemies around, much like the vampiric power of Vampire Lord works. What's it called? I don't remember. Vampire's Grasp? Probably something like that, yes.
They fly now! They fly now!
However, the telekinetic force perk is rather amusing by itself and available. However, the telekinetic force perk is rather amusing by itself and available much sooner, allowing you to damage things with objects thrown with telekinesis. It's fun, and with both ranks it's quite a decent and damaging power. Another crucial perk is the Initiate, which makes all novice spells of all schools free to cast. Bound Sword is a novice spell, and you will sometimes need to recast it during combat after you dual cast telekinesis, for instance. Okato's Preparation will auto-cast your best flesh spell, regardless if you have the magicka to use it normally or not. Finally, Alter Self and Atronach perk will be of utmost importance, as they fix the attributes problems of our build, as well as making you safer from magic attacks. Use Alter Self to increase your magicka as well as frost and shock resistances. In Conjuration Tree, take all the bound weapon-related perks on the right-hand side, all of them. In Vokrii, they make an even bigger difference than in vanilla, giving you a rather beastly weapon which you can take with you everywhere, even to Sidna Mine. You will deal extra damage, reduce magic resistance, and drain attributes of your enemies with each strike. If you never played a Vokrii bound weapon build, to try it. Okay, in Illusion take 4 ranks of Mastery and everything on the right, so 3 ranks of Animage and 2 of Master of the Mind perks. This should ensure most enemies will be affected by your Pacify spell. Lastly, perkless but high restoration, enchanting and sneak skill will be helpful, especially that the healing spell is a novice spell which you will cast for free. Now for the items. Enchant your gloves and boots yourself. Unfortunately, there is no clothing fortify one-handed items for these slots, so without expanding the mod list, we have to just make it the best we can. Ring and necklace of peerless wielding should also be used generally. The point is, use fortify one-handed as much as you can. Your endgame robe should probably be the Master Robe of Alteration, to reduce the cost of your telekinesis and greatly increase magicka regeneration. Once these items are obtained, you will notice a substantial drop in difficulty, as your telekinesis, a rather costly concentration spell, will become much more manageable. Mage's Circlet, obtained late to get the best leveled version, will improve the situation even further, with novice spells being free, magicka increased by 70 from the Circlet and 50 from Alter Self, and possibly with the blessing of Akatosh, your playstyle will be complete and versatile. Changes between force-grabbing people and direct combat will become your bread and butter. So here's the list of spells and shouts, just the essentials. Obviously there is no stopping you from introducing some more diversity of illusion spells or using something like Apocalypse mod, but I wanted this one to remain close to vanilla, so you basically only need the calm spells, the best armor spell, bound sword and telekinesis. Late game telekinesis will have a major influence on your combat style. With high magicka regeneration, you can throw people around almost without pause. The two shouts, Slow Time and Marked for Death, are far from necessary, but they can help your swordplay early on, before you max out the damage of your sword and the armor rating of your flesh spells. So most of the combat style has already been explained, I believe, but just to sum it up, get your bound sword as soon as reaching Riverwood to avoid the humiliation of using these uncivilized, clunky weapons.
So uncivilized.
Then focus on improving your duelist swordsman play. Get some one-handed perks, block often, sneak before entering open combat if necessary, avoid combat entirely using the Voice of Emperor if Imperial, or calm spells. Once you feel comfortable with this, focus on improving your alteration. Do some power leveling if necessary to max it out early on. Initially, it will be difficult to switch between dual-wielding telekinesis and sword. Remember to use your illusion when overwhelmed, and you should be more or less okay. With high magicka, you can safely open most encounters. With telekinesis, throw and attack the foes that survive the fall. This technique is much more aggressive and satisfying than sneaking and pacifying. And that would be more or less it for today. A rather simple one this time, but that's how I liked him. Humble looking, but surprisingly powerful and resourceful most of all. Hope you will have fun with this one as I did, and we will see each other again, I hope. I think. If the sky doesn't fall on my head, that is. Bye. Bye.
They fly now? They fly now!